Hello everybody, it's Andy Mack again. Just continuing on with my Jacobite and government troops for the 1689 campaign, 15mm. Just following on really from yesterday. I read up a bit more about the Cameronians for the Battle of Dunkeld. They were, in fact, I learned that they were Presbyterian Covenanters, so that's why I was probably right in my judgment that they were kind of the polar opposite of the Jacobite cause. Obviously, there's all different types of Jacobites, so it's difficult to say whether it's a religious polar opposite, but certainly polar opposite for what they stand for, and obviously their church and things like that. But yeah, the Cameronians, they were the government troops who defended successfully Dunkeld, and also Dunkeld, obviously having a ruined cathedral, it qualifies as a city, but it looks more like a large village, small town in modern landscaping. There's obviously the buildings there, fairly standard sort of Scottish town buildings, but they're noteworthy for the battle was obviously the ruined cathedral, but also there's the Dunkeld house, which was quite an unusual looking building, but it's a big manor house, no longer standing, but that was obviously a feature of the landscape which I have to bear in mind. But everything else was fairly kind of built up town or village sort of building, so a bit of poetic license there probably be able to use. So yeah, there's lots of thinking. Another bolt-on from yesterday's painting chat that I did was that I had it confirmed. Remember I mentioned about I was talking about horses and how my interest had been stimulated a while back with regards to what sort of horses are representative and are War Games figures representing the horses that they would have had correctly. And I did draw reference to somewhere that I'd learned from somebody on YouTube that the bear tapestry did seem to demonstrate or show Norman knights on what seemed to be very short and small ponies, or rather than. And that information had actually came from, and I did think it might have been him, but I hadn't, because I do follow his channel, and it's the sort of thing that would be mentioned, and but I just wasn't sure because it's quite a long time ago. And it's Ralph Astley, one of my favourite YouTube channels, if not the favourite. I think there's a couple of, certainly the favourite in terms of variety of interesting topics. He doesn't just have one genre. He does include wargaming quite heavily, but other interesting areas. A lot of them with reference to history, which I like, but some other interesting topic areas too. So yeah, it was Ralph who mentioned it back in the day. He dropped a comment on and reminded me, and yeah, and a good observation it was too. So and I'm led to understand he was considering doing a further update on that exact topic. So a bit of coincidence there. So yeah. So I won't go into I mentioned it all yesterday, so look at the one from yesterday about the considerations around horses, and how often our War Games figures are painted with big horses when perhaps they were less so. Certainly back in the day, the earlier periods, possibly. Anyway, one interesting thing I saw today was the new Osprey title for the American Civil War. Now, I've been obviously I'm going to be putting together a 2mm project for American Civil War, and I've been long toying with the idea of doing it in 15mm. I have actually got some 15mm figures for American Civil War, but I think I'll just put off eventually I like doing it in big scale. I did Napoleonics, I've got quite a lot of Napoleonics, and I like to do sort of army level or certainly corps level armies, and at the time when I was mulling it over, and to some extent now as well, I just thought it was too expensive a hobby, outgoing for that particular time, and a big commitment. Obviously, it takes a long time to paint big armies in 15mm, so I haven't. But obviously, one thing that I've been following with interest is these epic. What's the company called? War Games? No, what are they called now? Epic. Anyway, the Epic scale the big company that does the Epic War Games figures, and they are interesting. I mean, I've been a little bit put off because big companies sort of bring out ranges of figures, and with all the razzmatazz and things, and they then move on to another topic and a new market area, and often sort of the topic that they brought out, which you've particularly bought, will wither on the vine. And I'm certainly not one, as you can see by me painting up these old 15mm figures. I'm not one to follow the wargame trends necessarily, but in terms of buying and committing to it in a project way. But I do follow them as I'm interested in it. But certainly the Epic. Epic 15, I think 13mm or certainly small epic figures for the American Civil War. I've been tempted with, and what increased my temptation as well is that there are some smaller ranges, including Peter Pig and I think Monastir, the Monastir Militarum or something. They do small 15mm figures, and apparently they are quite compatible, so that does open up some possibility for a bit more cost-effective army building. And anyway, this new Osprey title, I was also delighted to hear in a quick overview that someone did on YouTube, was that it contains figure removal or base removal, which is what I like when you're fighting battles, and that's the old school way of doing things, that you'd be removing the unit's bases as they took casualties, rather than having just the unit as one big base, and when they perish you remove it, or it withdraws or whatever. But I quite like the figure removal. I find it quite fun, but it is bookkeeping, isn't it, a lot of it, so maybe I can also see the attraction of not having to do that sort of math whilst you're trying to have a fun game. So yeah, but Hot Lead and Cold Steel, I think it's called. So I've ordered that. It's on offer at the moment on Amazon for the UK. It's I think it's 12% off or something like that. So anyway, it's 15% off or something like that. Anyway, I'm getting it for £12, which I don't think is necessarily a bad price for a set of rules, even if they're a bit naff. I sometimes like just reading them and seeing if there's any mechanics that look interesting, even if the actual rules themselves are a bit naff. So it's cheap rules are quite nice to collect, and I say there might be some gems there as well. And certainly if you're talking big battle gaming, then it may well be that a cheap set of rules is what you want, rather than to cut out all the gloss, which is not necessarily necessary. Anyway, you know what I mean. So yeah, I'm just trying to think of that company name now. The ones who they do all the bolt action and so on. Not Warhammer, is it? Not Warhammer. It's one of the begins with War Games something or other. Anyway, not Perry Twins, but the other company not Victrix. But there's one other one with not War Games Atlantic, but similar, name like that kind of thing. And they do all the bolt action and Hell Caesar stuff. But their epic range. They've brought some ancient ones out as well. I mean, I'm not that enamoured by them, because they are quite the sprues are quite generic in their mouldings, and obviously you don't have a lot of flexibility. You can't sort of cut. Well, maybe you can if you do find singular figures like Peter Pig and stuff like that. Maybe you can cut them in half and make them smaller and all that sort of thing to make the units less. Because one thing I don't like with a lot of games systems of this day and age is they have a very sort of generic number of figures or bases in the armies. So you have your 12 or 24 or 32 man brigades or blocks and things, and it just looks very too generic for me. I like to have a bit of variance in terms of some being under strength or some being little detachments, and I think that sort of livens up the battlefield a bit. You might have a honor guard or a commanded shot or something like that, or a full-on hope, and all these sort of things. And it's quite nice to have a little bit of variance, whereas some rules seem to have, the number of persons or number of figures in the army are 12 or 24 or something like that, and it fits in all nicely and mathematically on the table when you line your army up, and it's all very kind of the same. So I'm not so keen on that, but it's horses are horses. It's whether it might still play a good game, so that's what people want to do. That's great. So I will certainly I've ordered those rules, and I'll can maybe have a read through and chat about it on YouTube. Sort of painting away here, so I hope you don't mind me dragging you through my painting and rambles. I'm going to Scotland in a few days well, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's 2 hours north of Inverness. One of my friends sadly took his life earlier this year, an old friend of mine, and one of my other friends, who obviously was also quite impacted by it, works up in Scotland on a Scottish estate. So I'm going up to have a bit of fun time up on messing around on that Scottish estate, and I will have a bit of a bit of fellowship, as they say, and a bit of a nice time. So I'm quite looking forward to it. It's not really. It's absolutely in the middle of nowhere. So it will be. I'll see if there's anything relevant to my historical projects, and if I can. I'm flying to Inverness and then getting picked up from there. So I'm mindful there are quite a few sites near Inverness, including Inverness itself. But I don't know whether I'll have time because my friend's coming 2 hours to pick me up. So I don't, and he's not that into historical wargaming or history in the way that I am. So I thought it might be a bit of a liberty to ask him to deviate. So probably a holiday for another day up in Scotland, seeing more of the sites. I've been up previously all around the Highlands and been to some of the battle sites, but I didn't record any of them. So I'd like to do it again, and perhaps go up and killiecrankie in relevance for this project I'm doing now, which will be fun. And there's a few other great sites as well. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, that's my. I'm looking forward to that. That'll be a nice trip. I saw a picture of Inverness on a line drawing. I was sort of just looking around the sort of getting inspired by what sort of buildings would have been in Scotland at that time, and I saw a line drawing of Inverness. So it'd be interesting to see if the bridge and things is still as it is. If I pass over it. But I do quite like Scotland I'm half Scottish myself. My father was Scottish, so he was from South Uist, and then for a period of his life they moved to Greenock. So he sort of grew up part of his time in Greenock, which is Clydeside, which again is that area is very relevant and involved in the Scottish revolt that I was on about with the Duke of Argyll's rebellion in 1685. They actually went to Greenock and attacked it, I think, at one point, and all around the Clyde and the various lochs and things that are near to Greenock, and the Clyde was the features and areas where that episode played out. So yeah, and of course when I was younger, even though I was very interested in history as a youngster, I had absolutely no knowledge of that at all. That these things played a part. So because it's not the Duke of Argyll's rebellion, I think because it was so easily snubbed out, but it doesn't really feature much. It doesn't, it's not mentioned. Very rarely is it mentioned. And certainly I didn't learn about it until I was probably just a few years ago, really. Came as a surprise. I think obviously the 45 dominates a lot of interest, doesn't it? And if you go to Scotland, everything's Bonnie Prince Charlie this, Bonnie Prince Charlie that, and I don't know unless you actually go to Clan Campbell area. I don't know the Duke of Argyll's actually mentioned hardly at all. Anyway, so yeah, interesting. And I think also the Monmouth rebellions are a little bit under acknowledged in the West Country, really. Possibly because it was a rebellion against the monarch. They used to say, as a myth, that they used to say that when Queen Victoria journeyed, she'd always on the train. She'd always pull her curtains when she went through Somerset. That was a myth that I grew up with. Probably absolutely no basis of foundation and truth, but a nice story all the same. Moving on, right? So I've talked about most things that I wanted to cover, really. There was another. Oh yes, the other thing. I mentioned horses yesterday. Another area I'm interested in is how on earth, in the ancient periods and even more recent, did they feed all the armies? I mean, I know agriculture would have been the areas where these battles were, there was a fair bit of agriculture and things like that. But you're talking thousands of men, sort of marching around Cornwall or marching around rural parts of Britain and obviously other places of the world as well. But how on earth did they feed them, or were they fed? I know things like oats and stuff, and there would be obviously a different sort of diet now. But don't forget, these guys marched quite a long way as well. So you would definitely need to feed them a reasonable food to give them the energy to do so, and potentially fight a battle at the end of it. So I'd be interested in how the logistics and were actually accommodated. I know they sent out dragoons and things to secure places and secure fodder and all that kind of thing. But if you're talking about 10,000 soldiers marching for, I suppose also the campaigns really were actually quite short, weren't they? And they'd often pass through cities, so they probably got a lot of subsistence each time they went to a city. But going to granaries and things like that, perhaps. But I just sort of, and I know they did loot and pillage, but there's only so much looting and pillaging you can do when in an area that probably sustains nowhere near 10,000 people. So yeah, interesting area. I haven't read up on any of that side of things, but I always wondered and baffled me. And some of these areas of the world where there's even bigger battles, how on earth did they manage it? And I know logistics was a big part of the sort of Napoleon's campaigns in Russia, and some armies and campaigns, people and soldiers lived off the land and stuff. But still, it would have been quite a worry if you were a commander and expecting and hoping that your soldiers are going to be able to live off the land. Because and it wouldn't take much to I suppose the scorched earth policy and stuff like that was to deter armies in certain places, didn't they, and to starve armies and things like that. So maybe the 30 Years' War might be a good starting point to look at that kind of thing. The English Civil War, perhaps, I don't know. But yeah, interesting, I thought, and how much fodder and things is required. I remember seeing, where was it? I saw a load of, I saw the King's Troop in London, the artillery, horse artillery, in all their regalia. And I was staggered about the noise, but the presence they actually had was phenomenal. The noise and all the horses, and And just to maintain that kind of machine, if you like, it must have been, particularly on campaign. And that's a sort of art, just to describe it for people may not know, it's the artillery, the Royal Artillery with all their limbers, and it's a real joy to watch, to be honest, when they're in London doing their thing. If you're into military history and the sort of, but it does make you think how big a footprint and how big a effort is meant to maintain one of these battalions, or is it battalion of guns? No, what would it be? Not battalion, would it be? It'd be a battery. Sorry, a battery of guns. It's certainly, because obviously we do wargaming, but just seeing, when you see 100 horses or something like that all in together, and how much grazing they need to do or fodder they need to have, and you're talking thousands, 2,000 horses at Cromwell's Ironsides, or and that's just Cromwell, let alone all his other units, horse or cavalry units that made up the Master Moor, for instance, or something like that. But saying all that, I suppose the period back then, it catered for a livestock, and the economy was more geared towards maintaining horses in agriculture, and so it might well have been a lot more easier than one would think and suggest now. And obviously things like limbers and carriage makers and cart and horse maintainers, that would be just part of the normal economy of the country. So it wouldn't necessarily be hard to find people who could maintain limbers. But when you see it nowadays, I'd say it's quite jaw-dropping. It certainly causes a commotion into central London, which is always, I'd highly recommend, even just watching it on YouTube or something. Anyway, just bear with me. I'm still trying to source the uniforms for Killiecrankie. It's funny, I've got so many books that sort of touch into things like Killiecrankie. In my mind's eye, I think one of these books I've got, it's actually in there. But I don't know which one. And I've got, and all the ones I've shown that I've been using for this project, I've got a heck of a lot of other books and army materials, and reference books and stuff which I use for my war games and just in personal interest. So it may well be that all I want is in there. And I did have a quick look online to see if there's anything obvious, and there were a few faces of reenactors, but it wasn't a concise or very detailed breakdown of what all the uniforms were. And I'm sure I can buy one somewhere, probably a League of Augsburgs will have a PDF or something with it, but I usually like to try and find them in a book or something rather than have to buy an item specifically just to pay to know what uniform people are wearing. I'd rather buy a book, and part of that book it's contained within. So there's probably maybe an Osprey book that covers it. I think there might be actually, but I'll have to have a check. I know there's another Hellion one that covers Killiecrankie, but it's about 20. So obviously Hellion was the one I mentioned here. I'm minded to rise, but the Hellion one was advertised £25. So I'm sure it's good, but it seems a lot for just a reference source for my Wargames project. And some of those Hellion books, although they're good because they're quite aimed at wargaming, they're not particularly well published. As has been said previously, some of them aren't the best published. And I know the one that I'm referring to, the Killiecrankie one, there's a few comments there criticising the artwork, saying it was like written artwork done by a child, or certainly not comparable or very poor in comparison to some of the other Osprey panels and charts, panels and items. I'm tempted to also buy the black powder rules to see if they are. I mean, a lot of people either seem to like them or hate them. Again, they're done by the company beginning with W, which I can't remember what they're called. But the black powder rules, which I haven't got, but it's a bit like, I feel you're on a precipice when you buy these rules, and you sort of end up falling into the chasm of doom with all the others, people who've bought those rules. So am I holding out till the last not to commit to Black Powder and all that goes with it. But that said, I have, George Gush is a generic set of rules which cover quite a large period of war games history. So, ancient, Renaissance history. So yeah, most of the rules I have played over the years have been quite wide in their coverage of period rather than game specific. I have played some period specific rules. The English Civil War I used to play. There was a rule set by what are they called now? Forlorn Hope. I used to play them. I used to play war game actually with Ben, the guy who wrote Forlorn Hope. I can't remember his surname now, but Ben, he was a member of the war games club that used to be in Kennington in South London, called the Outcasts, I think they were called. They used to, I don't know, they still go, but they used to war game above a pub. So obviously you'd finish your day's work, head there, and you'd be able to enjoy some war games with a few beers, which was nice, and then catch the late train home. And there was always very small club, there weren't that many members, but those that went were very committed and very sociable. Nice crowd of, and I was at the similar age to most of them, so it was quite fun part of my life when I was working and living in southeast London at the time, so it was quite easy for me to go there. And so that was happy memory. And Ben, whatever his surname is, wrote the rules for Forlorn Hope. So I played those. What other ones have I played over the years, which were period specific rules? Obviously things like, I have played things like Bolt Action and stuff, but that's what Beer and Pretzels kind of game, I would say. I enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it. It's good fun with other, playing with friends in a group setting, sort of club game. But most of the rules I've prepped are mainly over broad periods of time. I do prefer the old rules where they have, the army list is one book, cover all the armies we want rather than to buy different supplements. I've got the there's another war games rules that I've got, which I'm going to see if I get them. I'll show you them. So it's Ben Wilkins was the chap who did Forlorn Hope. I went up and just found it here. Forlorn Hope is again, it's an old might be a bit dated now, I don't know, but I enjoyed it. That was period specific rules. But yeah, a lot of rules nowadays, which I find a little bit frustrating, they're not all in one book. I bought these, which is a lovely rule set in terms of its presentation, Fields of Glory Renaissance, and they lovely laid out, and I think I'm led to understand there's probably quite a bit of errata with it, because it's has been used or was designed to be used for national competition wargaming. So, and with that, you can imagine the any slight ambiguity will be highlighted and errata comes out. So, but with that, it came all sorts of supplements, which are in itself. Obviously, you got this one here, which is the one that's relevant to my killiecrankie circumstances. That would be Duty and Glory of Europe, 1660 to 1698, and put that to one side. And you've got Wars of Religion, Western Europe, 1610 to 1660, and they're all quite thick rules. And you've got Clash of Empires, Eastern Europe, 1494 to 1698. Then you've got Trade and Treachery, Western Europe, 1494 to 1610. Then you've got Colonies and Conquest, Asia, 1494 to 1698. And finally, you've got Cities of Gold, Africa and the Americas, 1494 to 1698. Lovely artwork, lovely presentation. If I just show you that one first, I'm not going to show you them all because it's just be unrealistic. But what my point is, it's a huge investment to not only just buy the rules, but to have the all the relevant army lists. It's going to cost you a fortune. I mean, these aren't cheap, and I think they're out of print now anyway. These, I don't know, they're PDFable, but or they're on PDF. But I bought some of them second hand, the army lists. So, but they are, it's a good, well presented set of rules. To be fair, of the Osprey. So it was in partnership with Slytherin, I think it is, which is a computer. I think they're a computer company, or whether that's just the publishing, I don't know. But Slytherin is do computer war games. So yeah. Also, all the plates taken out of the Osprey titles. Colonial Spain. So it's got a feature of each army. The armies in this one, interestingly, it's quite interesting. You've got, I'm not going to be able to pronounce some of these, but it's the Arawak, Carib, Aztec, Tlaxcalan, Huxatec, and Otomi, Tarascan, Zaptec or Mitec, Chinatec, Mayan, Inca, Mapache, Arancanian, Amazonian forest tribes, Tupi, I haven't got my glasses on, I'm afraid, Pueblo culture, Chidemic, Natchez, southeastern woodland culture, Timucuan, eastern woodland culture, plains culture, Pacific Northwest culture, colonial Spanish, Dutch or English, colonial American, colonial French, English and West Indian, expedition, buccaneer, Oromo, West Sudanese, Central African, Central Sudanese, Funge or fur, West African forest, Mosi, Tuareg, 120. So I know Rolf Hopson did a Tuareg army, 120. Let's see what that says on there. But yeah, so I might still do these rules, but I have to say, with COVID and things, that was army number 20, 120. Anyway, you get the gist. Tuareg, Avis, Portuguese, and that was it. But because the whole rule set and they're designed for sort of competition game, I just didn't have the sort of the will to power to delve and drive through a new set of rules of that kind of detail. That's some of the older school rules are actually quite simple in their mechanics and manoeuvre and things like that, and they sort of expect you to apply a bit of poetic license, or a bit of, is that the right word? No, a bit of common sense, I suppose, or come to an agreement with your opponent if there is anything ambiguous. Whereas these rules, which are some of the Richard Bodley Scott, I think, was the guy who did them. Let's just see. Who was part of the sort of WRG DBM stable. Who was it by? Fields of Glory. Written by Richard Bodley Scott, which Fields of Glory, written by Richard Bodley Scott. That's what they look like in the Renaissance versions. Obviously, there's an Ancients version as well, with similarly hundreds or loads of supplements as well. And it's just because it's very quite detailed in a way, but certainly written in a way that's designed for competition gaming. So things like manoeuvre and stuff is all very precise, or it tries to be very precise. And just looking at it, it's just a bit overwhelming, really. So, but maybe next year when I retire, a bit more calmness in my metabolism. I might have the staying power and willpower to plough through and learn these rules and see what they're like. I'm told they're very good. So I don't know. I think they might have been superseded by Art de la Gare and a few other games that cover part of the period. There's a few of them, aren't there? Spare Point, Art de la Gare. There's quite a few that are popular now. But my friends who were into competition wargaming years ago, they've played these and they've recommended them as a good set of rules. And obviously, for my part, so I'm not painting at the moment. I'm just chatting to you and showing you books. But where's the one I was interested in? The Duty and Glory supplement, which I'll just bring to you. It's got lots of good plates on them, so again, I might use it. It's Covenant of Rebels, Restoration British. Looks like it's down in the Algiers, I think. It's just similar as Sedgemoor Matchlockman. So yeah, there's some quite good plates here. I wonder if there's a killiecrankie one here as well. I wonder, this is where the one I remember I said that there was a book where I thought they had some stuff on killiecrankie. It may well be in here actually. I'll have to have a look. But these are all sort of famously Angus MacBride, the Osprey, and Graham Turner and bits and pieces. So yeah, nice plates. Yeah, there we are. Anyway, what are we on there? So it's half an hour. I've been sort of freestyle waffling, so I'll just carry on doing a bit of painting, and I'll be, again, it's midnight, so I'll be packing it in a little bit earlier tonight. Got an early start tomorrow, so we'll go from there. Actually, I think I'll pack it in now, guys. I'm just feeling a little bit tired now. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope it hasn't been too, if you have stayed with me, I hope it hasn't been too mind-numbingly dull. And it's sometimes just nice to have something in the background to wither away time as whatever you're spending your time doing. So a few of my thoughts on stuff. And I will probably bring you some more stuff going forward. I think I won't be doing it tomorrow, but maybe later on in the week. I want to get a good dent into this army. I've got quite a bit more, I think, somewhere. So I'll find out what box I put them in. But yeah, so get this done, and hopefully then I can start on buildings and stuff. So that would be fun, and a bit of terrain. And I've still yet to bring you my American Civil War one, which I will do probably next week, or maybe later on this week. I'll see. Oh, next week I'm in Scotland, so yeah, so it'll probably be either later on this week, maybe the weekend, or I'm sort of going into some weird shifts now, so it means I won't have evenings free. So we'll take it from there. Anyway, thank you for your time and putting up with me if you do sit through it, and if you don't, I don't blame you. So bye for now.